coming up.
Yeah, and that's a growing maturation there of the quest. That the pain is not just a suffering, but it is an impulse to grow. And so you say yes to not only the happiness, but also the suffering in life.
Yeah. And we do
That's when
have
you
that.
grow towards the secret.
Yeah, and we do have that duality. How are you going to choose to grow, through pain or through your own free will? And that makes a difference, because
Huge difference. Yeah.
when the things come that are going to be hurtful, and I'm sure many of us have gone through things like this, it forces you to move. You have no other choice. But if you direct your own quest, then you can live it a bit differently. I'm not saying it's way easier, but I can tell you that it's a bit different, definitely.
Yeah, and that's what is most important. What you just said is a direct experience.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a nice theory, but I hope all our listeners will recognize these things, because then we have a beautiful mythology and a structure here to use on our path.
Hello, Synchronauts, and welcome to another Elysian Roundtable recording with my dear friend and teacher, Mike Bais from Circle of Avalon. How are you, Mike?
Very well, and again, excited to be here and do another podcast with you.
Excellent. And well, just a reminder, I am Aida from Mexxicamelot, and so today we're going to continue the topic from our last video, which was the three round tables, or the three tables actually, because you guys really need to go back to the recording. I was listening to it before we were going to do this recording for today. And there are a couple of bombshells that Mike threw at the very end of the presentation. I was like, oh my God. So just to bring us back to speed, what he was talking about was that actually there are not three tables. There is just the one table. That's the first bombshell. And you will talk to us a little bit more about it today. And the second one is that the first table, which is the one where Jesus Christ sat with his apostles on that Last Supper, is not round, or at least we don't know if it was round, but there is no evidence that it was round. So that was very interesting. And so, well, here we are. We're going to continue talking about these three tables, or these three levels of the same table. So where do you want to begin, Mike? Do you want to maybe go to the presentation that we very quickly prepared? What do you think?
I think it's a good idea.
All right. So look, what a beautiful presentation for today's topic, the three tables. So I think we're gonna be coming back to the following image, no, in the coming sessions as well, because this is a very long topic to cover in just one episode, no? So maybe this will be our friend, this image over here. So here's the bombshell. It's not three tables, it's one table, three different levels. The first table is not round. So I don't know if you want to tell us about this first table, please.
Of course. Yeah, and using the diagram of the Tree of Life, we can see exactly that one. So yeah, that bigger circle there at the lower part of the Tree of Life, sometimes also called the lower face of the Tree of Life, for who is familiar with this. And it is a circle, like a table. Now, that's not the only parallel here, that it's a circle, but also the circle signifies a level of consciousness. So all these circles in there, the Sephirot, combined with the paths, the whole lower face, is together a level of consciousness. And if we use modern psychology and the terminology there, this circle would be called the personal consciousness.
Okay.
Now, at the center of this whole circle and of the lower face, exactly there, Ida, that's Yesod, the foundation. And in the psyche, the foundation is our daily consciousness, or the monitoring device in the psyche, and we call that sometimes the ego consciousness. So that's the mode of operation, we could say, in our psyche, that is the center of our personal consciousness.
Okay.
Now, of course, that is connected with the other circles within the Tree of Life. So like Malkut, the kingdom, which is basically the physical universe, so your physical body, and Hod, which is the intellect, cognition, and on the other side we have Netzach, which is everything to do with action, but also about feelings. And then at the top part of the circle, that's Tiferet. You see there it's called beauty, but it has more attributions like the self, the psychological self. So those 4 Sephirot are within this sphere of the personal consciousness. And again, central to it, very important, is Yasod. So that's really the core of our operation there, of our functioning. Now, to already make a parallel with the round tables, the so-called most mundane table, so related to our daily life, is called the table of Camelot. So basically, that's where we all sit at. So if you're a beginning seeker, or even an advanced one, because we never leave that table. As long as you're incarnate and you are on a spiritual path, you will remain also connected to this circle and to this table.
Okay.
So sitting at that table, as it were, operating from that circle of consciousness, it means that we always operate through life, through our daily life, and all the things that are involved there. So that means, relationships, friendships, work, our finances, everything that you meet in daily life is connected. So the sphere of influence here is the horizontal domain of functioning. I mean, horizontal is relationships with a horizontal consciousness to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in Kabbalah, this sphere, this circle that you just pointed out there, that is called the sphere of action. So, operating from this table, we are always continuously in action and interaction with the world. And again, at the center of that circle of action is Yesod, and Yesod operates most of the time from reflections, repetitions, conditionings, and known structures in the psyche, and also known structures within the interaction to other people and circumstances. So the round table that we are talking about here, that's everyone's point of departure. And it is basically quite an unconscious point of departure. So most of the time,
it's very settled into the 3D, no? It's very asleep, very unconscious, just moving through like by inertia, no, so to speak.
Very much, yeah. And therefore, our actions on the seeking path are reactions.
I think that's a very important point that you're making. This is not, it's action reaction. It's very Newtonian. It's very 3D. No?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly. And to make it maybe a little or less theoretical for our listeners, within the stories of the Round Table, all these knights and ladies, they go through this sphere of action and reaction. They have to learn continuously by trial and error.
Yes.
They have to act, then be confronted with something. It can be something nice, but it can also be an obstacle of whatever kind. And then through that confrontation, they have the possibility to learn.
Yes, there is a movement there, definitely. I'm going to try to put a circle. What color do you want? I have blue, red, green, so that I can mark the table and then we can have it there. So what color do you like?
Wonderful. Let us do green.
Green. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm gonna try to, here it is. But I'm gonna try to, because this is all in live time, so you will forgive us if this is not post-production, this is directly actual work that we're doing. So
Yeah,
there it is, so that we can know what table we're talking about all the time, and I don't need to be pointing out with the pointer. So this would be this first table, and it represents the table of the round table of Camelot, and it's the sphere, we would say, the bigger sphere of action reaction in the world. No? Okay.
Exactly that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so in a sense, this is everyone's point of departure. And to give you a little example about this, is one of the most known stories, maybe for some listeners as well, is about Sir Percival. And just in very short, when he leaves home, he is being raised in a forest only by his mother and being kept ignorant of the world. So when he finds the courage and the inspiration to go on his quest, because his dream is to become a knight, from that moment on, he has no knowledge, no experience. So he has to go through this circle in order to find a sense of self. So to get to the top of this circle, that's the sphere Tiferet. Everyone can read it there.
Here it is.
So at the top of this circle, there you can find a sense of self-consciousness. But Percival has to grow and develop from Yesod, which is basically unconscious functioning, towards a sense of self. But the learning always is through direct experience, through trial and error.
Yes.
And we say sometimes in Kabbalah, that's also the way of the child.
Yes, of course. Definitely. Yeah. Because when you're a child, you're touching everything and you're moving around and you fall down and then you get up and then you see like, oh, this is not so good. Maybe this is good. Yeah, you're exploring everything. Definitely.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So the sphere of action and the table of Camelot. Now, there are more associations we can make with that sphere. And it's all related to Kabbalah, but also, of course, to the Grail quest. Yes. Now, the whole sphere there is also the influence of the world. So not only us in it, but also everything in the direct parameter. All the influences of your culture, your religion, economics, politics, whatever it is that comes your way, we are part of that world around us. And it's very interesting because in the Grail myth, that is sometimes called the forest of Logres. Okay. Well, what does that mean, really?
Exactly.
Logres is also sometimes called the forest of enchantment. So that sphere, we live in an enchanted world or in a dream world there. Because from the center, from our Yesod, we do not see completely the reality as it is.
Yes.
We see only through like glasses of interpretation, how we have learned it or how we have personally interpret the world. And so everything around us is real, but the way that we see it through our personal consciousness becomes an enchantment.
Yes.
Like living in a dream.
Yes, actually, if I may add something to that.
Sure.
From the Galactic Mayan perspective, from the Tolkien that I work with in terms of the synchronicity and time, we call that a dream spell. That's a dream spell, like when two or more people come together and they participate in this same dream, no, or this same creation, but it's a dream and it's a spell. So this is a really beautiful parallel between how also time has been used and could be used when you think about time is money, which is a dream spell, and it informs your life. Instead of time, time is art, or time, natural time will bring you the divine in you, no? So we're in this dream spell that is actually connected to the moon as well, no? To this energy of Yesod. So this is interesting, seeing these parallels. Wow.
Yeah, it all connects very well. There are no coincidences in this.
Yeah.
Well, otherwise we wouldn't talk about it.
Definitely.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're making a very good point, because like you said, the parallel with the dream spell is that we all participate in the dream or the enchantment, and we actually sustain it.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah, it becomes a collective dream, and with the influence of that Yesod, that lunar influence, which is also the sphere of dreams and the deeper unconscious, as probably a lot of people know already who are listening to us here. So those impulsive, instinctive influences from the consciousness there is coming from that part of the psyche. And that keeps the whole enchantment in place. Only through a growing consciousness can we ourselves wake up from a different perspective out of there. Otherwise, we'll be running around in that forest of enchantment for the rest of our lives. And that's in a sense fine, but not if you wish to evolve psychologically and spiritually.
Definitely. Yes.
But we cannot get around it. We have to go through the forest.
Yes, because it's all around us anyways. Like it's our environment. But you need to learn to discern, no? It's like when you go to a fair or a carnival, no, and there's this hall of mirrors, and you go through the hall of mirrors and you have to recognize, okay, which mirror is distorting everything and which mirror is portraying the truth. And that takes a kind of consciousness that comes with inner work. And through the use of these symbols, be through Kabbalah or the myths of the Round Table, we can get there.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. So that's this sphere of action there. And now there's another little thing. That center in Yesod is sometimes called the seat or throne of enchantment.
Of course.
So we're all sitting at the table as seekers. We all have our seat, chair or throne, however you want to call it. But we are sitting on that throne, and as long as we are only sitting there, we are big time under the influence of the dream spell, as you call it, or the enchantment. And you know, in the East they would say we are in samsara, we are in the wheel of birth and death.
Yes.
And we simply do not know.
In the Maya, in the forgetfulness. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the same thing. It doesn't mean that this world doesn't exist, but our consciousness that interprets the world is not the complete reality.
Exactly. And how we relate to that according to what we seem to perceive, or it's not so much what we perceive, but how we interpret, no, as you're saying, and then how we react to those interpretations.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
So our growing consciousness is like putting on different spectacles to see a different reality. So the world doesn't have to change with us. That's the ignorant perspective on it. You know, if the world changes, then I don't have to do it. That's not the serious spiritual work that we are talking about here. There, you know, my consciousness changes, and then I'm rising up the ladder of evolution.
Exactly. And you know what? Wayne Dyer used to say, if you change the way you look at things, then the things around you change. So that makes a lot of sense. The change has to come within. It's not like if we're waiting for the outside to change and bring us happiness or joy or our dreams come true, and we wait for that to be happy or to try to find health or whatever we're looking for, it's never going to happen. We're going to be always in that pursuit. It's like a dog running around after its tail, chasing its tail. It never ends. So it's the other way around. We have to find that joy, that happiness, that health within us, and then it will manifest outside, no?
That's exactly it. Yeah. So, yeah. If you imagine yourself to be a seeker / Kabbalist, but if you're sitting at the round table, you know, physically, but most of us maybe will sit there psychologically, then from this level, you know that you're a seeker. And it means you're not a believer.
Not yet.
No, well, a believer means that you assume something. But the seeker, the seeker doesn't assume anything. It is in pursuit of finding. And of course, in our example here, it wishes to find the Grail.
Yes.
Because at this table, it was that in the very, very beginning of Camelot, the table of Camelot, you know, all these ignorant young knights and ladies were sitting, and even the young Arthur just became king. And then the Grail revealed itself, you know, hovering above the table and then manifesting as a Grail of light on the table at the center.
Also, okay, I'm going to stop you there for a moment because I have to catch up on all of this mythology. And I'm sure many people, we have some idea of the myths, but we don't really have the knowledge that you have.
Sure, so, stop me anytime.
So this is huge. Like, I had no idea. The Grail actually appeared at Camelot, and that's why they went in pursuit of it outside?
Exactly that.
Wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
You could say even that the Grail, the round table was designed to receive the Grail.
That makes a lot of sense. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And
like try to beckon it, no? Like, come, we have a place for you. No?
That's it.
Wow.
And the point is, and I think we talked about this before in our sessions, is that this table is also the table where the different tribes gather. So, you know, it's divided most of the time in 12 sections corresponding to the 12 signs of the zodiac in astrology. It means this, that every type of the human being can sit at the table. So the completeness of the table is the complete human being.
Okay.
And all the knights and ladies sitting there, they are representations of us, of all different psychological aspects. So an historical parallel to this is that when the Romans left England, or Albion it was called at the time, they left a vacuum of political power and whatever it was. So the Celtic tribes were at war again with each other. So a kind of anarchy, you know, was again at the face of their world. And this was the tool, and Arthur was the appointed king to unite the tribes together, to let them sit at this object of unification.
Yes, this common ground for everybody.
Exactly. And even the circle itself, of course, suggests unity.
Yes.
And equality. But then, you know, if we would sit with a group of 12 people at a round table, we can still have our disputes and trouble.
Of course.
And, especially if in the center we do not have like a sublimation or a common ground of a spiritual nature. something that transcends our personal yesod interests, our little needs and desires and resistances.
Of course.
So the
Yes, because
Grail
if
is
not,
like,
I'm sorry, if not, everybody will be looking for their own well-being, not caring about the rest. So we all need something to bring us together,
that's it.
like a similar point of view, or something to attain together.
Yes. Greater than our little ego.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And that is, again, what we were just talking about, but it's good that you stop me every now and then when I go too fast. That's what the symbol of the Grail means. It's a symbol for the spirit. And the spirit is transpersonal. So it transcends the ego consciousness there. So it lifts us, as it were, even if it is for a few seconds, out of that enchantment.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives us something else, like inspiration, insights about, oh, wow, this world is not about me and my little tribal needs, but it's also about the other at the opposite part of the table, or, well, any of those ideas, you see?
Yeah, and also because we've talked about this at some point. I don't know if privately or during one of these recordings, but if not, here
Yeah.
it goes. Also, the round table, yeah, I think you mentioned that it's also representing the zodiac. And if you're studying astrology, which I began doing a year ago, and I'm beginning to understand more, these oppositions, they are always present between the different signs. But I think that these oppositions are there to help you grow and recognize the shadow that you have within, what you have to work with yourself. But if you don't have a central point like the Grail to guide you through that unification of opposites, to try to go into the center and find the best of both polarities, then it would be constant chaos and bickering, no?
Exactly that. Yeah. The nail on the head there. Yeah. And an interesting thing that you just said about the astrology is that if you look at the planets, almost all of the planets in the lower circle, that sphere of action, the Earth is the lowest in Malkuth, and then you have Yesod and Mercury there in Hot, and you have Venus in Netzach. Those are sometimes called the lower planets. They are closest, as it were, to the Earth, and their influence is quite personal.
Yes.
And we wish to grow to the center of the tree, but not passing these influences. They are very, very important. Yeah. So because Yesod may represent the tribal level, but tribalism in itself is not per se something bad. No, because you can also have a spiritual tribe, which is very conscious of what kind of vessel it is.
Yeah.
And that's the whole idea about this lower circle as well, is how do we form a foundation in Yesod and a kingdom in Malkuth that rests upon different principles, like higher principles, spiritual principles.
Of course. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
So again, the Grail is that momentary insight in spirit that happens to every seeker sooner or later. I never spoke to any person, everyone comes on the path through some kind of deep insight or inspiration. And that's their Grail moment. It doesn't last, but it gives us the point of departure, so to speak.
This push to go forward and begin
and
the quest.
Exactly that. Yes.
Wow.
And then the movement, the action begins from there. A different kind of action than you normally would do. You will go through life in a different mode eventually. And the beauty of the Grail romances is that whatever you read, whatever source of the Grail romances, all these different people, these characters or archetypes, they show us a different way how to go about your life.
Okay.
So you can have different examples how to, for example, deal with the challenges of love or justice or compassion, or how to approach the Grail in a more intellectual way.
Okay.
Or devotional way.
Okay.
And all of these examples, they have their own validity, so to speak.
Of course.
And that's really a very interesting part of the whole myth. It's so complete because it includes all the possible archetypes that you can think of.
Okay. And I think that people, well, I wasn't really aware of what you're saying right now. So for me, this is important. I think for many of the people who will be listening or watching to this video, because I've never really sat down to read the myth properly. I have that pending.
Yeah.
But now with this framework that you're giving us, we can approach these stories with a different eye and even see a way to better relate ourselves to these archetypes, recognizing them maybe as aspects of ourselves or who we were at some stage in our lives and how we can overcome certain things that happen to us without judgment. Because sometimes it's really hard to look back on your life and say, how did I make this mistake? This was very silly of me. But then you have to understand that the level of consciousness that we were at some point, we didn't have that understanding that spiritual work or psychological work even sometimes gives us. So these are good guidelines for us to go and look into the myth with a different perspective and make it very practical. No, it's not just fairy tales. This is like actual information for our own growth, right?
Exactly, again, very much. And the beauty of it is that all the archetypes in the Arthurian myth are so human. So you can easily relate to them because they all make mistakes.
Even the magical ones.
Yes, exactly. And so you don't have to be ashamed because you can see that it's also a part of life to make mistakes. It's to educate us. It has this, like a fatherly, motherly role for us to play. So we can actually evolve. And the path towards it from Yesod to Tiferet in this circle is vital in that sense. It's called the path of integrity or honesty. So that little, that little path or line in between. And that makes the difference between being a person who is still completely in the enchantment or the one who you can really be called a seeker. Because the seeker is interested in self-truth and integrity. So I'm going to find myself, and I cannot have any excuses any longer or blame other people. I have to take responsibility for my life. That's the way to the self, to Tiferet. And that makes that our actions are being directed differently from that moment on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It still will be a path of trial and error. We will fall back into old habits, old structures, and what have you. But you're on the way.
Yeah, definitely. This is really interesting because sometimes that's happened to me. I get discouraged, and I'm sure other people who are listening now, we get discouraged, no, when you start advancing and then you go three, like you advance one step and you go back three, and you're like, how did I make this? But I think it's part of that growth. No, it's not like a line that is always very direct. It's more like this, no, a little bit like going up and down, like a roller coaster. And we should be very loving and kind to ourselves when these things happen and not let that stop us from trying again. Because sometimes people get discouraged and then it is possible, I imagine, no, that you're beginning to move out of your Yesod, going into your Tiferet, and then something happens, and then you come back down again, no? And then you get trapped. Is that possible? Does that happen?
Oh, yes, all the time. And I don't think there's a person who cannot testify of this. That there's a little possible negative drawback about a two-dimensional picture like this, which is that it seems to be so static.
Yeah.
But one can be at the place of Tiferet and Yesod at the same time.
But this is more like quantum physics. You can be
Yeah,
in two
exactly.
different places at the same time. Okay.
In consciousness, that's possible.
Of
And
course.
simply, what that means is, for example, that you are aware, consciously aware of your own functioning and the fact maybe that you're making the same mistakes again. Or, for that matter, that you are victorious over an old problem. But you are aware of it. And then you can see yourself rise and fall,
like
but it doesn't only overcome you. You are still there. And that makes it differently in the sense that self-consciousness also is the doorway into free will. So
yes.
If you do this over and over again, this attempt to follow truthfulness, then there's a growing entry into the potential of free will. So you can really make a choice out of the conditionings of your, learned life.
With awareness.
That's it. Exactly. But it's like training anything, training muscles. You have to do it in order to develop it.
Yes. Yes, definitely. It's like you're mounting a beast that is untamed, and you have to tame the beast, and it takes time and effort and a lot of discipline and continuity, because if you let it, then it happens to me a lot. That's some an area of opportunity that I have, that I get distracted and I forget, and I start wobbling, no, and then I'm like, I got distracted again. I have to come back to, no. So it's a challenge, but I think also the fruits of that effort, they are really good. Like, it's hard to get there sometimes, but once you start advancing and you see the changes around you, it's like, this is worth, like, it's a pain in the behind, but it's worth it, no?
Yeah, it is, exactly. Yeah, and that's a growing maturation there of the quest. That the pain is not just a suffering, but it is an impulse to grow. And so you say yes to not only the happiness, but also the suffering in life.
Yeah, and we
That's
do have
when you
that.
grow towards the secret.
Yeah, and we do have that duality. How are you going to choose to grow, through pain or through your own free will? And that makes a difference, because
huge difference.
when the things come that are going to be hurtful, and I'm sure many of us have gone through things like this, it forces you to move. You have no other choice. But if you direct your own quest, then you can live it a bit differently. I'm not saying it's way easier, but I can tell you that it's a bit different, definitely.
Yeah, and that's what is most important. What you just said is a direct experience.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a nice theory, but I hope all our listeners will recognize these things, because then we have a beautiful mythology and a structure here to use on our path.
As a reference. Yeah.
As a reference, definitely. Yeah, like a navigation device. Yeah. Another thing that you just said, it just reminded me that on the diagram of the Tree of Life, you have a triad there that is Hot Netzach Tiferet. That one, exactly, that triad. That's called often the animal triad. And that's exactly what we are crossing when we go from the path to Yesod to Tiferet.
Okay, when we're doing this.
Yeah, exactly. And that animal part of ourselves we will encounter. And which is very important, because that is the driving force within us. It wants to achieve something. It wants to grow above the average level of functioning. So it is ambitious to accomplish something. And the animal has the acuity of in consciousness to be attentive to something. It's the growing consciousness of the natural world, so to speak. Okay. Something a stone, the mineral level of the vegetable level cannot have, but animals can have that almost. That's why it's in touch with Tiferet. They have a sense of self there.
Over here.
Yeah. At the same time, we are also confronted there with the inner animal that doesn't only that also not only tries to rule the world in a sense, but also rules us through a kind of compulsion and instinct. So it's also a challenge to get past that animal level.
Yes, it is. Yes, because sometimes and this is something that Dr. Joe Dispenza says also, like the body becomes the mind, and the body is like, if you feel like this, for example, hunger, or you feel this, like you want to move and you want to do things, but the mind is like, no, this is time to do some other thing. So if you don't put the animal side or your body in its own sphere as it should correspond, and the mind where it corresponds, then the body takes the place of the mind, and then that's why our impulses take the best of ourselves. No, that's why it's very easy to get angry and lash out at people, because your body is reacting to all conditionings. And in order to break free from that, you're going to need a reprogramming and put everything in their own correct sphere. If not, you're going to continue falling down into the same old patterns.
Exactly that. Yes. So we can use the animal, or we are used by the animal.
Exactly. That's it.
So we have to tame it, as it were, become conscious of what animal is within us and how it runs the show sometimes, or how we are going to lead, not chain it, not imprison it, but how we are going to direct that force.
Exactly. So it makes me think about the tarot card of the Chariot. No, we are the prince inside the chariot, and you have to direct these to these sphinxes or whatever animal is there. You have to, because if not, they're gonna take you wherever. And so we have to just take that place and just like, okay, we need to go here, no, not the other way around. And there are practices that can help us realize how that animal has a grasp of us. Like, for example, right now we're doing a practice with you of the eternal birth, 28 days of preparation before the Advent. And something that is required of us practitioners is don't eat red meat. Like, you can do it, like it's not forbidden, but they're saying like you're telling us, no, like it's best if you just for a moment, for these 28 days, like don't take any stimulants, don't eat red meat. But it's not because it's forbidden, it's because we're doing a certain spiritual work or in psychological mind work that requires our body to be a little bit lighter, no? And then the animal comes in. It happened to me more last year than this year. This is the second year that I'm doing this.
Yeah.
But this year also I'm like, oh, I want my coffee, no? Like, oh.
Yeah.
And suddenly I see people eating meat. Like, I don't really eat so much red meat, but I see the people eating red meat, and I'm like, no. And the animal wants to jump, and I'm like, come back. It's okay. It's for a few days. This is a special practice. Take it easy. But it when that animal jumps, like, oh, I want all the sugar. I want the caffeine. I want the alcohol too. No, like my father was drinking a cup of wine yesterday. Like, look at me, I can drink and you can't. And I'm like, yeah, it's okay. No, instead of doing like, forget it, I'm gonna drink the wine, or I'm just like, you are horrible. Why do you do this to me? Because the animal can jump like that as well. I was like, yeah, no, it's okay. Enjoy the wine for me, and I'm gonna drink some water. No, so we have these practices where we can really understand. Okay, how is that animal taking a hold of us, no? Or where
Yeah.
is it jumping and reacting?
Yeah.
And it takes discipline, like to say, the coffee is there, no, or the beer is there, and no.
Exactly. Well,
But
there you have
it's
another
interesting.
example of the path between Yesod and Tiferet is,
Yeah.
you are in a conscious process, Tiferet, and the unconscious impulses of Yesod and the enchanted seed are pulling you back. And there is this dialogue, as it were, going on between these two spheres within you.
Yeah.
So there you have the dynamism again. It's not a static diagram in reality.
Yeah.
And all these things are going on. Like in Netzach, you have the desire to participate in social matters, but also, the desires for the nice things in life, like food. And on the other side, hot, there are the images of that correspond with what you normally like and dislike. And then, of course, you have the body that you just rightly spoke about, which has its own memory.
Yes.
So with food, it's the same thing. We can be very conditioned about food in an idea that what we need, but in reality, it's not so. The sugar is a very well-known example here.
Yeah.
If you abstain from sugar for a few days, you hardly miss it. So these are all conditioned patterns again. Yeah.
Yes. These are like addictions that we have in our bodies and in our minds as well. So you have to work both sides, the body and the mind. But as you say, no, because I see that difference from last year to this year. It was so hard for me last year, so hard. And this year it's lighter. I mean, I still feel the animal there trying to rebel now, like, but I'm like, no, it's okay. Like, take it easy. Let's go drink a cup of tea and that's it. Drink some I don't know, some water or whatever, no? And it's starting to die down and but it takes effort. The first time it's hard and we tend to give up very easily. But here I think that what the work with this particular table is asking us to do is sit down in the table, let the grail be shown to you, and go on the quest, and don't worry if you're gonna mess up or you're gonna be tempted, no, or you're gonna make mistakes. It's all part of the show, no, so to speak.
It will happen.
Yeah, it's
It's
expected.
a guarantee. It's a guarantee. Yeah, you will suffer in a sense, but it will be always worthwhile because we are in pursuit of ourselves, and so the eventual treasure or the boon for everyone, and I mean for everyone on its own level, and whatever you're going to find, it's always worthwhile.
Yes, definitely.
So, and just a little thing what I wanted to say, when all these people are gathered at this table and the grail is descending upon the table and they behold this miracle, and they're all equally in awe, so they have the same spiritual experience. All these people say, this is huge. So and then they make a promise. They say, we will all go in pursuit of this miracle to find it again and to behold it unveiled. So the spirit unveiled, the naked spirit. And but it would be a disgrace to do it all together. So we all will go on our own separate ways into the forest where it is most dark and where there is no path. So this is a typical Western idea, is you go on an individual quest and you have to find your own way through it.
Yeah.
It's quite challenging. Nobody to hold your hand.
Yeah.
But you will be guided.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes, that's
the beginning of the quest. That's the seeker's way there.
Excellent. Well, I think that with this we can begin wrapping up. I'm gonna stop sharing the image now because I think that now we have a very good idea of this first round table. So I don't know if there's anything else you would like to add, Mike, to close our session for today.
Well, maybe good for us and the listeners to, for a next session about this and a continuation, that we could talk a little bit about the so-called code of arms,
Okay.
because that's still about the table of action, but it's also the way out into the next sphere.
Okay, awesome.
We
That
can
sounds
we
very
can even
interesting.
make like a little practice or a little exercise for
Oh,
everyone.
I like that idea very much. Excellent. So we'll have to be prepared because in the next session you will be participating as well. So if you guys synchronauts have any questions, you know that you can leave us some comments here on YouTube, or you can contact Mike. Can you please remind us where we can contact you, Mike?
Sure. You can send an email to, that's my name, mikebais at rocketmail.com.
Excellent. Very
Mikebais at
good.
rocketmail. Yeah.
Okay, so there you can be contacted. Also, we will be showing your Facebook and Instagram pages and your web page. And
Yes.
also, if you want to know any other things related to Mexxicamelot, you have the information here as well. So we'll be waiting for your comments or your questions if you have any for Mike or myself. And this seems like this is going to be a very, very interesting next episode. So we'll see each other very soon. Thank you so much, Mike, for this
Thank you.
amazing lecture on the first level of the table. And there is so much more to be discovered, but for now, I think that this is being incredibly amazing. So thank you so much, dear Mike.
Again, my pleasure. Thank
And
you so
thank you,
much.
Synchronauts. We'll see each other very soon. Take care. Until next time. Bye.
Bye bye.